we have that conversation early, but also build a model around that, a data model and a decision-making model. So that's pretty crucial. And clearly from the customer point of view, we're already seeing a little bit of expectation there. We're monitoring things in their house. They know that that's actively happening. They will want us to respond pretty quickly if there's an issue. And that has huge resource connotations for us, particularly when we start to do this at scale. So it's finding that balance. And lastly, just, the dashboard thing, great for visualization, but really the goal is what we do with that data. Let's get it into some systems that actually do something meaningful with it. We're doing some early stuff just in terms of creating some tasks in our mobile working platforms, things like that, but just getting the data out and making it useful. A huge thing again, as I say, my background is very user-centered, so there's a lot of conversations around IoT from a technical point of view. For us, it's about understanding that user engagement, and obviously we're hearing a lot about that today, which is really good to hear. So it's not just about getting this out there. For us, clearly it's what we can do in terms of identifying some of the pain points for our customers and actually improving their experience of the council as a result. I touched on, there are fears around some of this. Big Brother was quoted quite a lot in our local media, so that's something we need to think about. And really, I think key is going to be how we have the conversation using this data directly with our customers. As we've already heard, customer behaviour quite often influences environmental aspects of our social housing. That's not always an easy conversation to have, to tell people they're doing things wrong in their own house. They can be quite resistant to that, clearly, and rightly so. So it's really how we build a mechanism that we can have that conversation. And lastly then, in terms of just sharing that data, as I say, creating the right model, creating the right decision matrices so that can go across departmentally, potentially outside, across agency, third sector, etc., to have a meaningful way of using that data. Just very quickly, these are some of our next steps. So, as I mentioned, we're trying to get this particular IoT layer citywide. We've identified initially a kind of quadrant of the city that we're going to fully light up, try and get that seamless as possible. We're upscaling the actual proof of concept into more tenants kind of live environments. We do have some specific building issues in York that we're going to target next, where we know there's been problems, particularly around damp and mold. Really, it's about starting this conversation, and Leeds clearly are already having this conversation, so we're starting to just build out that conversation so more people are involved in that. And ultimately, it is a big piece, so we're already looking to see how some of these things will join up with other aspects of our IoT ambitions. So we're doing some stuff with smart transport. We've got a few quid in the pot for that, which is good. So it's understanding some of the dependencies that we can start to build out in terms of the IoT layer. We're currently doing a trial in domiciliary care, I can never say that word, using some quite clever tech that uses IBM. It's quite Watson, but allegedly it's some AI stuff, so that's quite interesting. So lots of things happening. Thank you.
Just to head off a question that might arise later on, just to inform you, which might be of interest to you irrespective of this project, actually. So we, on the back of our street lights swap out, over the next 4 years we'll be changing all our street lights to LEDs, and we'll be making them smart. So we'll be able to dim certain areas after, say, 12 o'clock, or we'll know when things are going wrong, and we can just fix the street lights when we need to do that. So in order for that to work, we are installing a LoRaWAN network of our own right across the whole of the district. So not just focusing on the city centre, because it's going to be working with the lights, we need it to work right across the district. Now, of course, that obviously brings about other opportunities, not just focusing on the city, but focusing on other areas around Leeds metropolitan district as well. So we're currently going through sorting out all the paperwork for that procurement exercise. I expect that to be published sometime around, say, July time, for example. I think the street lights swap out. It's not dependent on Laura, but that could happen anyway. I think that's starting around August, September time. So that's just to give you a little bit of context. I know, as Simon said, York are doing some work there with sensors and all the rest of it on their Laura network, and that's something that we will be deploying here as well. What I'll do now is I'll hand you over, we're getting to the nitty-gritty now. So I'll hand you over to Nadia and Ian, who are here from Government Digital Service. And that's the part of Cabinet Office, yeah? But we're basically running this programme, so they can tell you more information about the project in detail, the requirements that you need to go through, and then following that we'll have a Q&A.
Hi everyone. So I'm Nadia and this is my colleague Ian. And I'll walk you through the application process and how you can submit a bid if you'd like to bid for this competition. And Ian again is going to touch base on what success looks like for you, for us. So key points for you. I won't go much into details here because you've already seen the video. As you've heard, there are 15 challenges, and this one is our number 12. So we're really excited to be on this journey with Steve and Simon. So congratulations on the challenges. In addition to the video, what I really want to stress here is what distinguishes the GovTech Catalyst Fund from any other innovation funds. And there are 2 points that I'd like to highlight. One, it strongly encourages to experiment and innovate through research. And research, you can, underline it twice. That's the key. And then at the end of the process, you have a marketable solution with the lead buyer. Although the fund hasn't been exclusively designed for SMEs, it has proven to be very SME friendly. So we have found that over 93% of the companies are SMEs. So we strongly encourage SMEs to apply. Next. So over the next 2 slides, they will display the timeline for the challenge, and roughly it takes about 1.5 years to go from the start to the end with the product. We're currently at between point 3 and 4. So last week when the challenge opened for application, it turned into a competition. And we're now at the stage where we accept applications from companies, non-for-profits, and social enterprises. Once the applications are evaluated, we are going to fund up to 5 companies. This is phase 1, and it lasts 12 weeks. And the companies would be asked to conduct a feasibility study, mainly consisting of discovery and prototyping, and whether your hypotheses are proven or disproven. At the end of this process, we will evaluate the outputs, and if we decide that it's worth going into phase 2, the phase 2 is much larger and longer phase. Out of these 5 companies, 2 will be selected, and they'll have a year to develop the right solution for this challenge. So in the phase 1, which is 12 weeks, suppliers would get £50,000 including VAT, and in the second phase is up to £500,000 per company, including VAT. We are running these initiatives using the Small Businesses Research Initiative, which is a EU procurement framework, and we have commissioned Innovate UK to run this part of the process. In a nutshell, the SBRI has 3 goals. This is to help public sector adopt new ideas, provide a route to market, and support innovative companies. In the next few slides, I'll walk you through the features. So, what does it mean to actually have an SBRI contract? First of all, please note that this is not a grant, it is a research and development contract. So you will be expected to deliver against milestones and outputs, and suppliers will be paid on achieving these milestones. Subcontracting is allowed, and the contracts will be signed with the prime supplier, and they remain accountable. You can subcontract with any companies within the EU. Normally, government would own the IP rights, but with this initiative, the IP rights will remain with the supplier. You need to provide a royalty-free version to the challenge owner, Leeds and York. In this case, it needs to be a non-exclusive version at normal competitive rates. We want you to develop and exploit the IP and use it. So in fact, one of the criteria when we look at applications that we choose to fund is whether there is potential to scale. So we want companies to be able to scale. If a reasonable attempt to commercialize the solution has not been done within 3 years, then the IP rights will revert back to the challenge owner. This competition is open to all organizations, regardless of types and sizes, and whether you engage in the sector or new to the sector. So it's open to everybody, including universities and research organizations. But if you're from the latter, you need to demonstrate a route to market. International companies can also bid for this application as long as they have presence in the EU. So how to apply? The competition is already live on the Innovation Funding Service website. So you can quickly Google it, but I'm sure Steven will also circulate the link with the slides afterwards. What you need to do is register first, and this is through the green button over there. And I'll stress in a moment why it's so important to do it today. So, as a supplier, these are your next few steps. And now I'll talk you through each of them now. So first, register through that green button on the Innovation Service page. It's very important to register now to just get it out of your way, because registration closes a week before the competition. So even if you're within the deadline, you won't be able to apply for the competition if you have not registered before the 8th of May. And then this is the only way for you to also have a copy of the documentation. So the invitation to tender and any other supplementary documents. Upon registration, you're going to receive a username and a password and a unique application number. If you'd like to, if you have many great ideas and you'd like to submit more than one bid, this is very welcome. But you will need a different unique application number for each of the bids. So what you need to do is that once you register with your first registration, you need to contact the support team at Innovate UK and say that you're planning on submitting more bids. Because if you try to do it yourself, the system crashes. So the only way is to use the support channel. And you'll have the link at the end of the slides. Okay? So once you register, please do download all of the documents and read them once, twice, 3 times. It's very important that you actually really understand the scope we need, so you actually address it in your application. So read it several times. Also read the contract, because it's not, it cannot be negotiated. So if there is a line or anything that you'd like to change in the contract, it's worth considering not applying for the challenge. Documents. This is a very non-brainer, but please do follow the requested format for the documents when you submit, because otherwise they will become eligible. So your application should be in a Word document format with your new application number attached to it or in the title, and all appendixes should be sent as PDFs. When you submit your documents, you may or may not get a confirmation email that actually they have been received. So that's another brilliant glitch of the system. So again, you will need to contact Innovate UK if you'd like to get that confirmation that they have been successfully received, if you don't receive an email. So, once the application process is closed, we have commissioned Innovate UK to form a panel of experts who are going to assess your applications. Then we, as GDS and the challenge owner, Steve and Simon, we would receive a ranked list. And at that point, if we decide that we would like to have a second sift, we would form a moderation panel between the two organizations, and then the results will be announced for the remaining 5 companies. So what makes a good application? The points on the slides are non-brainers, but I really want to stress that your application should be clear and concise and to answer the question. Because we see many times that it's a very long, convoluted way, and at the end of the day, the answer has not been responded. So be clear and concise. So we really need to understand what you want to do, why you want to do it, and whether you have the capability to deliver against it. And I'd like to stress on capability. So that's really important. So show us that you have the right people to deliver what you're saying that you will. I would also strongly recommend that you review the Digital Service Standard and the Tech Code of Practice. So there's in them, also as this initiative, there's a very strong focus on user needs and user research, as Simon alluded, and on working agile. So make sure that you understand it, and you also can demonstrate in your application that you understand what user needs and how you do research with users. Because this first phase, it's all about the R in R&D contracts. It's all about research. This is what we want to see. Next slide is an indicative timeline of how the competition is going to run. I'd like to draw your attention to the deadlines of registration and application submission, that they are noon, not midnight, UK time. And if everything goes per plan, you should know whether you're successful by the 5th of July. Here are just a few bullet points again as a summary of the most frequent asked questions. Contracts cannot be negotiated, it is what it is. And then all prices include VAT. We apply fair market value when we assess the bid's financials, and in very plain English this means that thus whatever the cost you've given, is it a reasonable cost, or are you attempting to bundle up a lot of other costs for running your own business? And I would like to end with a few links which you might find helpful. So the first one, definitely take note of it. So this is Innovate UK support contact information, either by phone or by email. So this is where, if you have any questions about the application, the website is not working, or you get stuck on something, just get in touch with them. And remember that the deadlines are very strict deadlines, so if the computer or the system crashes and it's 1 second past the deadline, they would not allow you to submit. So apply and register today. The second one is KTN. So KTN can help check your submission application once it's written. So if you'd like us independent pair advice, please do approach them. They also organize a number of networking events if you're looking for partners on this project, etc. And the last link is if you consider that you know, it all sounds really great, but maybe this is not a challenge for you. We have a number of other challenges that are going to open in the next few months. And so there is a list of these opportunities on this blog. Also, you can take a look and understand what has worked in the past or any other lessons learned that might be useful for you. And with that, I'll hand over to Ian.
Thanks very much, Nadia. That was a really useful overview. So there's a couple of things to say about that. So the first thing is that although the SBRI process looks a little bit clunky, do persist with it, there's a reason why SBRI is quite clunky. It's because it's been around for a really long time. It's a tried and tested way to get smaller companies to play with government. So the system's very old, and it has a few glitches, but it's tried and tested. The NHS has been using it for over 10 years. You know, a lot of money has gone through the system, and it is specifically designed about supporting smaller businesses. So it's the reason we use that framework. So there are a couple of things that can be quite negative. I mean, first of all is the fact that you can't negotiate a contract. That is sort of a slight downside. On the upside, it means you don't have to negotiate a contract, and that keeps your lawyers' fees significantly lower. We can't sort of, you know, when we're operating a challenge-based environment, we've got to have one contract going to 5 people. They've got to be absolutely equal. So it's just one of those things. The thing that is worth saying, though, is that when you read that contract, when I read it, I was reading it, I spent a number of years sort of doing digital things, and it's literally one of the fairest contracts I've ever seen for suppliers. And I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised at how well it is set up to support. So the reason GovTech is here, we come from the government digital service, so a big part of our remit is obviously about helping government work smartly, but Leeds is already smart, you can see that. So the other part of it, and it is inherent in our name, is we're not just about gov, we're also about tech. So we're supposed to be the team that provides the catalyst where we connect government up with tech. And the interesting thing to note is that GovTech Catalyst isn't just a government digital service initiative, it's a cross-government initiative. So we have members on that board from right across government, and most critically, the part of government that delivers the funding is the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So we're using their budget because one of the key focuses of the programme is actually to support business, i.e. you. So in terms of what we do, I mean, obviously we do bring an element of funding to this. So we invest in funding, but we're a bit more than a cash machine, we like to think. So the other thing that we invest in as a team is we invest expertise in this process, because what we really want to do is to help suppliers work with government. The SBRI framework helps that. It means you don't have to jump through all those evil procurement hoops that you would normally have to do, which would just be impossible for smaller companies to do. Nagi's already told you how many sort of companies we've already funded our SMEs. The interesting thing is that 45% of those companies are companies with 9 or fewer employees. So we really are looking to support the nimble companies that could potentially partner up if you need to get the right expertise on board, but to deliver a really innovative solution for your needs. So another part of the expertise we bring to this is just teaching you how to work in a more governmenty way. And Nadia touched on the government standards that we'll be introducing you to during this project. If you want a really neat summary of what those standards are, Google this phrase, which is GovTech Catalyst standards. That will take you to a summary of the specific part of government digital standards that we'll be helping you to work more closely with. So the good thing about those standards is they are really great standards to work with. They're just great standards for any tech company to work with. I've actually worked in the private sector for 20 years. I've only recently come into the public sector. In fact, in my last role, I was working at a development company, probably very similar to some of yours. I've used those government standards in the private sector a lot because they just teach you how to build the right thing and how to build it right. Because fundamentally, what we want you to do at the end of this process is to come in and do some amazing research and development and really understand this problem, get close to the users, come up with really great creative concepts test them and turn them into a product. But the really important thing from our point of view is that at the end of that process, you should have something which you have 2 buyers for automatically. But what we really want to see out of this, and this is absolutely key to our success, and it's the thing that we will measure, is how well you then go on to sell it into other places. Because if it works in York and Leeds, it will work in Exeter, it will work in Aberdeen, it will work in Cardiff, it will work in Derry, and if you're feeling really ambitious, it will work in Lyon, and it will work right across the world. If you build the product right and you build it flexibly, you should be able to pivot and tailor that and put it into many, many, many markets. And that's really where we want to see you go. So, in sum up, this is as much about supporting suppliers as it is about supporting government and getting government and citizens better solutions. Be creative, as Nadia says. The first phase is R&D. Just remember that the R comes before the D, and invest plenty of time to work with Leeds and York, and particularly get close to their customers. So that's it from us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. We'll round off the afternoon with our Q&A, so I'll invite the speakers back. You'll notice there's not enough chairs and too many speakers, so first come first. And I'll hand over to my colleague Daniel Hardy, who'll be able to moderate.
Afternoon everybody, my name's Daniel and I work with Stephen and Hannah a little bit, but I also work in our digital information service. I'm the sort of key contact for housing, so supporting some of these guys with the things they're working on. I'm going to try and facilitate the Q&A session now. Probably, depending on the numbers, maybe take them in threes and work our way through. And it would be really helpful to tell us who you are and where you're from, please, before you launch into your questions. So do we have anybody who wants to kick us off? Gentlemen back, thanks very much.
My name is Kalana. I'm pretty simple. The first one is all around access to data, so GDPR and consents. Are we looking at designing and suggesting that process, or are we putting to all processes? Big issue. So,
Anybody else with another one, or should we go straight into that? Sorry, gentlemen back, yeah.
So John Hill, Community MA, member managed assets. And we on the call outs you're looking at specifically on mates, we've got stats on where those call outs are, so we're trying to reduce that, which ones these opportunities are.
Could you repeat the question?
Sorry.
It was a question about do we have the stats on where the call-outs are? So if we've got call-outs for maintenance, do we have the stats and do they tell us which area of the city those are taking place in?
Well, also what type?
Yeah, and what kind of call-outs they are. Now, I'll go to this gentleman here, then I'll come to you, okay?
Hi, Julian Tate from Motor Data Manchester. Within this process, will we have access and will we be able to work with groups of tenants and end users with
Okay, so 3 questions which were around GDPR standards, was about call-outs and what kind of call-outs and where they are, and then the third which was about access to tenants and the thing we stressed in the talk about that end user engagement. Who would like to tackle those? I'll come to you, Rob, I think, for the original one. The one about call-outs, and then I might go to somebody over there about GDPR. I'll come to you first.
Call-outs. Yeah, I guess I said it at the start, we're data rich, we've got robust IT systems, we've got several years worth of repairs data that can be accessed. I don't see any issue with that. I don't see how we can proceed without that. Yeah, repair priority, repair type, and geographic location.
Nicely codified as well.
It's codified, yeah. It has to be codified.
Codified.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of asset information as well, so we do have quite a lot of rich data that we use.
Mandy, probably you for the tenant issue, I think.
Yeah, we've got a number of tenant groups that we regularly consult with on service changes. So we certainly could have discussions with our formal groups, but also really keen to hear from the views of our wider tenant base as well. So we do e-surveys, we email out and text, we do a number of different styles of engagement to get the feedback that's representative of the tenant base. So certainly we could support and facilitate.
And in terms of people with care and support needs, that's a requirement for all our work, so we have quite strong engagement. And so that can be quite generic groups like older people, but we can get very specific. So if you want to engage with a group of Sikh elders with diabetes living in one bit of Leeds, we can help facilitate that as well.
I think some of the challenge might be the hard to reach groups. Certainly in our experience, there are very active tenants who will have that conversation. It's not always that difficult to incentivise that conversation because they want to get involved and steer how we're doing things. But there are a lot of vulnerable people, a lot of hard to reach, that it's a bit of a different beastie. So I think part of this would be to understand how we do that. Personally, I've got some experience. We've done things around things like youth offending, which was very much a challenge to get kind of user design basis. So we've been looking for some innovation maybe around how we can reach out to some of these groups. So it isn't just, I mean, the active tenants are very important, but we need the broader view of this.
If I just might grab somebody from the audience, there are two colleagues sitting over there who work in our information governance team. Can you just give us a quick rundown on the kind of GDPR standards we would want people to adhere to?
Obviously, immediately consent comes to mind where there is direct engagement with, certain individuals concerned. But there will need to be due diligence arrangements and contract in terms of any personal data sharing and consent and this kind of things. But I think we had a little preliminary discussion with Stephen before we came here, and we anticipated this kind of question. So we were saying, depending on what kind of demand and what kind of type of information is required, we will have to build it into contracts that will be issued to 5 companies.
Okay.
I suppose just in terms of the user end of that, we did have to write quite a lot just to get that initial proof of concept off the ground in York. So we got the privacy policies. I mean, that's an iterative process. We're always looking to improve them. But dare I say, it was relatively straightforward from a organisational point of view. So there's a lot in terms of, I guess, that we already have that relationship with our tenants. So it was certainly a layer upon that, I guess. So the privacy policy stuff seemed to be quite well received. So, but it's something we'll look at again as part of the process.
Yeah, and then similar, I'm not saying it's easy, but certainly the Board of Health and Wellbeing in Leeds, we've done a lot of work around this. So Leeds is the only system in the country. We've joined up health and care records across all the NHS and social care based very strongly on permissions of citizens, which are very positive. We've done a slightly similar project as part of Active Age, which is a Horizon 2020 bid. You can just Google it. Leeds is the UK site for that, and that's involved us working in this case with Samsung, and again working with older people about permissions around sharing data, both with evaluations in the university, with ourselves in social care, with health partners, and with Samsung as well. So we have some experience of working in it, which is enough sometimes to know it's difficult, but I think we've got a culture of positive support to resolve it.
And just add as well, just the conversations that we've had about this, that we would obviously need to, for each of the applications for each of the suppliers, go through a DPIA. But we will cross that bridge when we come to it, if you like, because in some respects we don't know what the kind of data that you'll be requesting and that you'll need access to. We may need an information sharing agreement set up, that kind of thing. So we will be doing that piece of work, so we're aware of that, and it's about understanding what you state in your application, and then we will take it from there. So yes, we're all over the GDPR.
Right, so I'll take the second lot and start with the gentleman sort of second over the black integration.
Tom from Ovon Technology, based in Manchester. Just really a follow-up to the thing about the data. Do you have sort of costs assigned to sort of response to maintenance and call-outs? And is this something that we in the room can see? I'm just thinking, for example, if you know that damp call-outs every year cost you £30 per household, it might not make sense if we suggest here's a £150 solution, for example, just so we can sort of know the benchmarks and stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't know, I'll take
Can you say the question?
Yeah, certainly. Sorry, gentleman from
for informed actions. I've got just a quick query about the challenge itself. The challenge is about how might we use technology to monitor the condition and quality of the council's housing stock to provide improved services. But a lot of people we've heard from were talking about not the stock, we're talking about people who are working on the stock or who are living in the stock. So the question is, who is the client? Is it about the housing stock, or the people who are working on it, or the people who are working in it?
anyone else with it?
Hi, Harvey West with working with EQ and the University of
Could you speak up, please?
Harvey West with EQ and University of Bradford. I was interested in what you were saying, Simon, actually, about some of the resistance of your council tenants to getting tech into them. And clearly, this whole thing's about getting tech into the home, really, to enhance the lifestyle. And I'm just trying to understand what are the kind of barriers that you've come up against that we can address in our proposals that we put in from a sort of economic.
So, first question was around the cost of call-outs and would an expensive solution make sense against the cost of the actual repair itself? So, what kind of solution do you do? So, do we have that data and is it available?
Sure. We have the cost data, it goes alongside the repair data. I guess we need to look at whether we share commercial sensitive data in there, cost data in there, that we find a way of presenting that in a fair and compliant way. But yes, we have those costs, and I guess we need to understand as well in terms of cost of solution versus